Coming up on Chasing the Natty, we're continuing our transfer portal catch-up series, and this week we are focusing on the running backs. We're going to go through as many as we can who could have a huge impact on this upcoming CFF season, and which ones might be some early fool's gold. In addition, we have some QB transfer updates we'll go through real quick, and most importantly, tonight, we are introducing the new official co-host of Chasing the Natty. All of that and more coming right after this.
Smothers picks his way to the right and is tripped up, reaching for the end zone. Touchdown. What a start.
Give it to Reed, and there he goes. Nobody's going to catch him. Touchdown.
It's caught. Jeremiah Smith. Touchdown, Ohio State. The legend grows.
This is Chasing the Natty, a college fantasy football podcast. All right, welcome in everyone. This is Jared Palmgren, host of the Chasing the Natty podcast. Hope you guys are having a wonderful ride to your work on this Monday morning. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day, everyone. We are the College Fantasy Football Podcast on the Campus of Canton Podcast Network. You can find us on all of your podcast feeds and on YouTube every Monday morning during the off-season at 6 a.m. sharp. If you want to support the great work we do here, head on over to campusofcanton.com. Subscribe there with any of our phenomenal tiers. We have content ranging on all sorts of college football games, whether that is CFF, Devy, C2C, College DFS. Really, if you play it, then we've got content, whether that's tools, rankings, pretty much everything you need to succeed. In fact, right now, if you want to support the show directly, make sure when you sign up for one of our yearly membership tiers, you use that promo code NATTY, N-A-T-T-Y, to get 10% off your yearly membership. Again, that is promo code NATTY, N-A-T-T-Y. If you can't do that, you can just show us some love by leaving a like, a comment, and subscribe on the YouTube side of things. If you're on the podcast side of things, just leave a 5-star review wherever you can, and make sure you are following the show. Not only does that show us support, but the entire game of college fantasy football in general, a ton of support. If you have any further questions or just want to get in touch for whatever reason, you can find me and the show on Twitter. I'm at CFF_Jared. The show is at Chasing the Natty, and tonight, y'all, I have someone very special to introduce to each and every one of you. Tonight, we are adding officially our brand new co-host of Chasing the Natty. You guys have seen him on here a couple of times in the past. He is a great guy. He has done great work for another network for the CFF world. I believe he's been doing it a year, 2 years now. He's been doing his show over there, and it's just great stuff. Guy's full of passion. And after this past year, I saw an announcement on Twitter from him that he was leaving that former company, and I said, that just will not do. This man is too good, and I made sure to snap him up. And really, this is something I've been thinking about going into last season. During the offseason, I was really thinking about adding a permanent co-host to CTN. I love this show. It is my baby. It is a lot of work to put this together by myself. Week after week, and the guests have always been great and everything, but I really did need somebody to kind of step in to help run the show. And when I offered that opportunity to this man, he jumped at it with enthusiasm, and he jumps with everything with enthusiasm, if you know this guy. And I'm excited to have him on here. He's going to be great. He'll be the default second voice on this show going forward. So he'll be on every single week. Obviously, if he needs a week off and everything, I'm not going to force him in here. But it'll give me the opportunity if I need to take a week off. He'll step in here. He'll run the show for the week and everything. So without any further ado, again, welcome, Mr. Chris Battistel. Chris, welcome, man. Congratulations. You are officially now the co-host of Chasing the Natty. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Jared. Thank you for having me as the co-host on this show. I've been a big fan of Chasing the Natty for quite some time, C2C in general. When you shot me the message, I was dancing on my desk when I was reading it. I'm super excited to be here, super excited to help Chasing the Natty and be part of this and continue to expand the college fantasy football game. I just hope I do a good job and put a little bit of pressure there on me. So, but I'm ready for it, man. Pressure makes diamonds, as they say, right?
I would not have said a single thing about you, Chris, if I knew you weren't going to live up to it, man. You are awesome. I love the enthusiasm you bring to everything. Your One Foot Down podcast over at Fantasy and Frames was fantastic, and I feel lucky as hell that I'm able to add somebody as great as you to my CFF team over here at Campus to Canton, which is already such a great team we have over here, with Nate Marquise.
Yes,
Chris K, Ethan Sowers, Justice, Justin Leo, aka Volume Pigs, like all of us in here. It is just a phenomenal team. And Chris, you were just the latest addition. And thankfully, somebody now that I can count on to help run this show every single week. And I would not just entrust that to anybody, Chris. You're awesome, man. So
I appreciate that.
Before we get into the full of the show and everything, Chris, like, do you want to kind of give your story about how you got into like college fantasy and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. I started playing fantasy football was my gateway into college fantasy football. I started playing Devy in 2016. And then from that point, Devy turned into Campus to Canton leagues. Then Campus to Canton leagues turned into full-blown college fantasy leagues. I was making NFL fantasy content. And then I just kind of got stale with that. And as I fell more in love with the college game, the traditions, the atmospheres, the blowouts, the comebacks, and everything in between, I found a love for covering the game from a fantasy football standpoint. And for the past 2 years, like you mentioned, I've been the host of the One Foot Down podcast. I had a great time, met a lot of great people doing it. And then, time changes everything, and I had the opportunity to join you on Chasing the Natty after that opportunity wasn't available anymore, and that's where I'm at, man.
And again, I feel lucky as hell to be able to grab you, man. I like I said, as soon as I saw that you were a free agent in this space, I'm like, that will not last. I need to snipe this guy before anybody else gets him. So happy to have you, man. Let's get on into this. We got a ton to cover, as we always do with these transfer portal shows.
Yeah,
last week we went an hour 40 on the quarterbacks. We could even go potentially longer here tonight because of just how much is going on with these running backs. But man, I mentioned at the end of last week's podcast with Nate, I'm so glad though that we're not going to have to do this again in the spring. We're just getting it all out of the way now. We don't got to worry about, all this getting upheaved here in about 3 months' time. Chris, again, we're talking running backs here today. What is your kind of general feel on the running back transfer portal so far?
It's portal combat, Jared. It's everyone's just going everywhere.
Have you coined that phrase yet?
No, I haven't, but maybe I should. We got guys committing to one school and then going to another school. I don't really know what to make of a lot of these landing spots. I think it was Austin and Felix who mentioned opening up a consulting firm for these guys so they go to the right spots. It seems like a lot of money chasing, but as someone who covers the college fantasy game, it gives us a lot of stuff to talk about in these early months. So that part's fun, but just trying to keep up with it all is hectic.
So you mentioned Portal Combat, and I'm looking at the top guys from this past year for running backs. And I mentioned, like, right at the start of the offseason, that like this upcoming RB class for CFF had the potential to be an all-time great because there were a lot of guys returning. Kewan Lacey, Ahmad Hardy, Antoine Raymond, LJ Martin, Cameron Dickey, Jaden Baugh, Deshaun Bishop. These are all guys in the top 24 that are returning to their spots. And then it really came down to what's going to happen to some of these, especially G5 guys. They're going to enter the portal. Where do they land? I don't think we got outright portal slaughter like we did last year with a lot of these guys. I think a lot of these guys end up in really good spots. That we can still kind of count on them still being the guy for their respective new schools and everything. So we will definitely get into all that. But as much as we're talking about running backs here, man, let's talk about some of these quarterbacks that have changed since last week. A lot of Guys that we were kind of waiting on to find landing spots have found landing spots. Sam Leavitt, quarterback out of Arizona State, officially the new QB1 for Lane Kiffin there at LSU. Deuce Knight officially landed at Ole Miss. We talked about that possibility a lot last week, so we might skim over that one a little bit. Taven Jackson, not a guy I had on my radar as a guy that could end up at a really good spot. He lands at North Texas. We could talk a little bit about why that might be super exciting. Bo Pribula, I had him going to Georgia Tech. He surprised me. He is going to Virginia along with Eli Holstein there. But it does sound like Pribula is basically going to be given that starting job. And then in addition as well, Dylan Raiola landed at Oregon. Houston Longstreet landed at LSU. Both of those guys look like they'll be in backup position. So very unfortunate for those who had them. And then last but not least here, the big one recently, right before the portal closed, Darian Mensah, the quarterback out of Duke, transferring out. Pretty much all but guarantee that he will be the Miami starting quarterback. We knew that Miami was going to pull something like this. God forbid they actually, develop their own quarterback. They got to go and steal somebody else's. Chris, let's start with Sam Leavitt here real quick. Like, what are your general thoughts here? I like it. I think it's a better landing spot than, because I thought he might be going to Miami. I think it's a better landing spot than Miami. Kiffin will know how to use his legs. As of right now, I have him in my top 20 quarterbacks going into this next year. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd probably have him at the back end of that top 20. I don't know if I'd have him in the top 15, but top 20 is a nice spot for him. We know what Lane Kiffin can do with CFF quarterbacks. We've seen that. We've seen the production that they've been able to have under center. And LSU, LSU is going to produce a point-producing quarterback. They got the pieces around them to help him be that guy for LSU. So top 20, definitely not out of the question.
What about Deuce Knight here, quarterback out of Auburn going to Ole Miss? Talked about it a little bit last week. He's going back to Ole Miss. Obviously, Lane Kiffin's gone, but John David Baker, who was the offensive coordinator at East Carolina these past couple years, he's been solid there. He worked with Kiffin as a co-OC before that, so you have to imagine there'll be a lot of the same kind of stuff going on here. Hauser was pretty solid under John David Baker. He was QB 21 this past year. He was QB 19 in the second half of 2024 once he got the starting job there. So we do know that John David Baker can produce CFF quarterbacks. In addition, Deuce Knight's athleticism is just absolutely nuts. Like, we're talking 90-plus percentile in almost every category for speed and burst over with our athletic comparison tool over at Campus of Canton. You can check it all out there. Dude's just absolutely crazy athletic, so you have to think they'll be using his legs quite a bit. He is somebody that I have in my top 24 quarterbacks going into next year. Yes, it's a lot of projection, but we saw in the one game, dude will absolutely torch smaller competition. I think he'll translate well to the SEC for the most part, as long as John David Baker's as good as I think he is. What about you, Chris? How are you feeling about Deuce Knight?
Yeah, I'm in the same bucket with that. I'm excited for Deuce Knight. Not too sure how much I'm gonna own share-wise of Deuce Knight based on what we're gonna see from his early ADP. If he's going in the top 3-4 rounds of drafts, I'm probably not gonna have any Deuce Knight. But I'm excited for the potential, like you said, that big game where you put up 50-plus fantasy points is nothing to shake your head at. So I'm looking forward to Deuce Knight at Ole Miss. I'm just curious to see the wide receivers that they're going to have around him.
No, I would definitely agree. That'll be a big part of it going forward. What about Taven Jackson here, quarterback out of UCF, going to North Texas? Again, like I said, I don't think I was ever expecting to say Taven Jackson's name again. I hyped him up a little bit last year. Didn't do so hot at UCF. Now he's going to North Texas. I didn't even think of North Texas really as a major landing spot for a quarterback, but how quickly do we forget, Chris, that, with Neil Brown, if he gets a dual threat quarterback, he could be pretty beautiful for CFF. Garrett Green, awesome under Neil Brown. QB 34 fantasy points per game in 2024. Garrett Green is QB 17 in total points in 2023. Like, there's a lot of potential here. Taven Jackson can run. You could almost argue he's better at running. And with him moving down to the American, that should help him out a little bit. Like I said, he wasn't very good at UCF by any stretch, but I think he showed enough flashes there, as well as during his time in Indiana. Get him in the right system, he could be pretty solid. I don't see any major competition for him here at North Texas. So at the moment, I've got him starting, and if he's starting, I have him in my top 30 quarterbacks to start the year. It feels kind of crazy, but like, I
A
feel like
little
there's a
bit.
lot of potential there.
Yeah, the potential's there. Top 30 is probably his ceiling, if you want to put it like that. I'm not overly excited to Taven Jackson. Like you said, the system's great. If the system's going to let him flourish as a quarterback and try to be a better thrower than he is a runner, opposite of what you said, then I'll be a little bit more exposed to Taven Jackson. But he's probably a quarterback that I'm taking if I'm best ball drafting as my fifth or sixth quarterback.
Yeah, I have to imagine that's where I'll actually end up. And if that's the case, I'll be grabbing a lot of him, I think.
Yeah.
Bo Pribula here, quarterback formerly of Missouri, now headed to Virginia. Like I mentioned, Eli Holstein's going there as well, but the beat reporters are pretty clear that Holstein will be backing up Pribula. At least that's the expectation right now. Maybe that changes in spring and fall camp. We'll see. Virginia losing a lot, man. But they are bringing back their entire offensive line, which I did not know, and that is going to help them out a lot going into next year. They'll have to replace all their weapons, both at running back and wide receiver. That's a little easier to do, though, when you have all your offensive line coming back. Like, I think that's pretty... Like, they had some good guys there, obviously, but I don't think nobody that was there that was irreplaceable. They have currently, Rico Flores and Deshaun Martin coming in at wide receiver. We'll talk about the running backs they're bringing in here late. At the end of the day, though, this is a dual threat quarterback in the ACC with a defense that should be significantly worse than it was this year because, again, they're losing a ton on that side of the ball as well. Kind of hard to hate it, right? I think this might be a guy, if he comes at the right price, I might take a couple shots just because of, how high scoring that conference can be. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm the same. I like the landing spot. The rush attempts are going to be what I'm chasing for out of these mid-level quarterbacks. And at Virginia, like you said, with the returning offensive line, it could spell out some big points for Bo Pribula at Virginia. So I'm excited for the transfer. If he falters, I don't know how long he will keep the job. Not saying that Holstein is going to be hot on his heels, but we've seen Holstein have some success at Pitt. So any falter with Pribula, I wouldn't like. I don't think Virginia will hesitate to put Holstein in there early. So it's going to be like Taven Jackson, one of those guys that I'm taking either late in my drafts or in the middle portion of what I'm trying to build.
Somebody in our CFF Slack, I can't remember who it was off the top of my head, pointed out that these are two very similar type of quarterbacks as well with Pribula and Holstein. So maybe that kind of makes it where they're not as gun shy about pulling the trigger on putting Holstein in there if Pribula is faltering because you're not having to change your system as much. So I agree. Definitely something to keep an eye on there. Last guy we'll discuss here, Darian Mensah, quarterback formerly of Duke. Ooh. Very likely headed to Miami. I'm sure we could discuss the whole ethics and everything going on with, just stealing somebody else's quarterback that's already signed a contract kind of deal. But let's talk about the fantasy angle here, Chris. It's interesting. Carson Beck, QB 49 this year before Cam Ward, QB 3 for fantasy. Two very different areas that Mensah could fall here. I happen to think he'll end up falling somewhere in between these two spots, right? He's not probably as dynamic as Cam Ward. He's definitely more dynamic than Carson Beck is with his legs. Again, definitely not a guy you're not going to be drawing up run plays for, but he can definitely scramble out, I think, a lot better than Carson Beck can at certain points. To me, just going off of my pure preliminary projections overall, this move is a stock up for Darian Mensah, right? Going from Duke to Miami. Before this transfer, I had Darian Mensah down about QB 28 had he stayed. Now under Shannon Dawson there at Miami, I've got him moved up to QB 21, which, again, falls right in line between where Beck and Ward finish. Do you kind of agree with that assessment?
Yeah, if Darian Mensah finishes right in the middle of those two, you're laughing unless you're reaching up to draft him. If he does go to Miami, I mean, I think it's 95% chance, or are you giving it a full 100% chance?
I think it's a full 100% chance at this point. Again, there's very few programs that would pull a guy like Mensah into the portal this late. And think about the programs that still don't have a quarterback. You think Georgia Tech's pulling Mensa into the portal right now? Like,
No.
That's Tennessee.
Yeah.
Tennessee maybe, but again, they were very quick. Like the not the beat reporters, but like the national reporters were very quick to say that Tennessee was not involved in this. So that kind of narrowed down the options real quick.
Yeah, it has
Miami.
to be Miami at this point. Yeah,
So.
yeah, but I like the landing spot as well. Lots of weapons for him at his disposal.
Oh yeah, no, Mensa with Malachi Tony should be a ton of fun.
Yeah,
all right,
absolutely.
That catches us up on the quarterbacks. Let's get to the bulk of what we're going to talk about here today, and that is the running back. So let's start with the number one running back in all of CFF this past year, Mr. Caleb Hawkins, former running back out of North Texas, headed over to Oklahoma State, obviously following his former head coach there, Eric Morris. Dude was absolutely on fire last year. Again, RB1 in total points, RB1 in fantasy points per game. If you had this man, he basically won you the league, unless your opponent just had some crazy final week of the season. Again, 1,200 yards, 23 rushing touchdowns in the regular season, 338 receiving yards, 3 additional receiving touchdowns there as well. Just absolutely bonkers stuff. In a way, it came out of nowhere because Eric Morris is not known for having true workhorse running backs like this. Again, a guy that just clearly earned this role, according to Eric Morris. To me, this is the best case scenario you could ask for Caleb Hawkins, right? He's following Eric Morris. You're going from ACC to Big 12, which is the least strenuous jump you can have in competition if you're going from the G5 to the Power 4, right? Pretty much guaranteed he's going to get that preferential treatment again. The question is, how much of a cutback are we expecting here? And is that enough to really knock him out of first round consideration? Because if he was still at North Texas, he'd be the 101.
Absolutely.
Is he still there for you, Chris, even though he's moving up to Oklahoma State? I'll tell you this, my projections, I even gave it the discount because he's moving up in competition. Dude is still RB1, and it's by a pretty good margin.
Big margin?
Pretty good margin.
Yeah, I'm like, I won't hesitate to pick him at the 101. I'm in quite a few drafts, so I'll be able to either overexpose myself or just have a good amount of Caleb Hawkins. The only thing I'll note, and this is more of a profile context than it is as a red flag, is the receiving usage. Over the first 5 games where he took over as the lead back, he had 23 receptions, but over the last 5 games, he only had 11. So the pass game involvement for me cut basically in half as the season went on. Again, I'm nitpicking here. It's not a knock on the player. It just tells me that how OK State might or should be in a different spot than North Texas was. I think North Texas won or lost 1 game last year, and they were pretty much beating out their opponents. With OK State's offensive line, the schedule being a little bit more strenuous on OK State, how much more opportunities is he going to have, or where the game script is going to favor him as the running back? You know, is OK State going to be in 50% of their games where they're going to have to be catching up or throwing the ball more? And what does that do for a player like Caleb Hawkins? It's probably like, does he get 1,200 yards again? If you were to say, okay, Jared, I'm going to give you a scenario, 1,000 yards, over under, you probably got over on.
I got
Caleb
over on
Hawkins,
that,
right? 1,100 yards.
I'd say I'm still leaning towards the over.
Just seems like you're just over that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I would say that's it. I can definitely see a 100-yard cutback, cutback here in the rushing department. Definitely see some rushing touchdowns coming off here as well. But like I said, you take 10-20% off of what he did last year, and he's still comfortably in the top running back conversation. So I'll ask you, Chris, you're at the 103 in the way too early draft. Obviously, we haven't kicked that off yet. If Caleb Hawkins falls to you at the 103, you taking him?
Oh, I'm snagging him. That's
exactly right.
That's an easy grab. Yeah, the production's there. We've seen the productions. And by no means am I saying that Caleb Hawkins is a fade at this point. I'm drafting him confidently. I'm just not pretending that there's zero risk with Caleb Hawkins going up to OK State. And the risk for me is the lack of offensive line. If you look at the offensive line rankings from where North Texas finished and where OK State finished, it's, North Texas is up here at the top, and OK State was down here. The level of competition is going to be that much more at OK State. Caleb Hawkins, dominant last year. I'm expecting him to be dominant again. If he doesn't get the rushing usage that he got at North Texas, I'm hoping that he can hit that 30 reception mark and be a little bit more involved in the passing game. If that's the case, then I'm going to be hyper exposed to Caleb Hawkins. So exposed that they might call the cops on me.
Oh, jeez. And your office co-host. I'm joking. No, my projections definitely kind of look at that, and they say, 32 receptions is what I got him projected at, 350 receiving yards. It's looking good there. I note that during that stretch where you're talking about him getting less receiving usage, blowout after blowout after blowout after blowout for North Texas, right? Like, that's kind of like, that would be the explanation there. I have to imagine he'll get more receiving work, as Oklahoma State is absolutely not going to be doing that to the rest of the Big 12. And if they are, we got, Hawkins is in a much better situation because of that.
Yeah,
so,
agreed.
Let's move on to the next guy here. Justice Haynes, second year in a row we've had him on this transfer portal show as a spotlight guy, and this one I think caught a lot of people by surprise. I think many thought that Justice Haynes was pretty much just draft bound after the great year he had under Michigan, even though it got cut short because of injury. I think a lot of people kind of saw it and they expected, oh, he's done enough. He'll go to the draft. It's a relatively weak running back year. He'll probably be one of the better running backs in the draft. All of a sudden, announces not going to the draft. He's going to the portal, and he lands at Georgia Tech? Question mark?
Yeah.
This was like no question. Like, once he got in the portal, immediately Georgia Tech is involved. They're offering him a big bag, and that was probably a big reason why. Like, even if Justice Haynes got drafted up pretty highly, the money we're talking about here from Georgia Tech, about $2 to $3 million, rivals that of going into the NFL for running back. So, pure money perspective, you go to a place where you're going to be the lead guy, and you're getting paid to do so. Probably not that hard of a decision for Justice Haynes here. We'll talk about Georgia Tech, though. Not been great for running backs lately. Jamal Haynes was RB 106 this past year, and he was RB 68 in the year before that. Now, very legitimate question, in my opinion, is how much does that have to do with Haynes King, and how much Haynes King has been not only just sucking up that those rushing attempts, but also this past year, he pretty much got the RB1 treatment, even though he was the quarterback. Like, he had 180 carries in 12 games compared to just 125 for Jamal Haynes, who was officially the RB1. So, if you think about it that way, there's certainly room here for an RB1 here at Tech. Again, his main competition, as of right now at least, would be Makhi Hughes, who's good, but I don't think he's going to challenge Justice Haynes. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be, but if it ends up being someone who's nowhere near the athleticism of a guy like Haynes King, I think it pretty much just becomes wheels up for Justice at that point. And then, to me, kind of the last thing here, I mentioned the money. The rumor here is that Tech is paying him about $2 to $3 million to play here. If that's the case, no way they're paying him that to just be part of a committee. He'll be a workhorse back in the ACC. You're going to enjoy it. Chris, you got anything else to add here, or did I kind of cover everything?
Can he throw the ball? Is he going to play quarterback too?
Maybe. I will find out, man.
No, but I like the landing spot. Like you mentioned, with Haynes King there, the quarterback or running back one for Georgia Tech last year, I think he had 40%. He had 40% of the team's total carries. So all the halfbacks and Haynes King combined, he carried nearly 50%. He was responsible for nearly 50% of Georgia Tech's carries out of the backfield. 50% of the team's total rushing touchdowns was Haynes King responsible for last year. He's gone. Justice Haynes comes in. I think last year, outside of that USC game where he left at the half, he was putting up game after game, 20 points, 30 points, 23 points. He was a consistent producer, and he was going, I think his ADP was back of 4 last year, top of 5.
Yeah. roughly about there.
No, Justice Haynes.
Oh, Justice Haynes. Oh, sorry, my bad. Yes.
Yeah, he was right there. So he was giving you RB1 production when he was on the field, and you were getting him at RB15, RB16. So I'll take that. The Georgia Tech offensive line took a couple of hits. The two top centers transferred out. They had another tackle leave for the NFL. So it's going to be interesting to see the team that they're going to have and how good they're going to be, how much they're going to be in games. But if we look at it right now, I mean, it's Justice Haynes on that team and pretty much nobody else.
Nope. Like I said, Makhi Hughes is pretty much his biggest competition. Makhi Hughes looked pretty solid this past year, but like I said, I don't expect him to challenge him for the RB1 job. The big question mark here, though, I think more than anything, is going to be George Godsey. If you don't recognize that name, I don't blame you if you're listening. That is the new offensive coordinator there at Georgia Tech, taking over for Buster Faulkner, who is now over at Florida. And George Godsey has not called plays at the college level. And he didn't call plays at the NFL level either. He was the quarterbacks coach over at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so we're talking about a complete unknown in terms of what kind of system we're going to be running here. The hope is that it'd be something similar to what Buster Faulkner's been doing, because that offense has worked really well for Georgia Tech in the last couple of years. But again, complete wild card. The fact that they went out and bought Justice Haynes tells me this man wants to run the ball. And so I think that is at least a pretty good key there. But still, something to note that we just have no idea what kind of system we are expecting here. There's not a lot of coaching tendencies we can really draw on here. So let's move on to our third running back here, and it's a guy that I personally am doing a complete 180 in terms of hype this year. I was not a big fan of Carson Hansen last year for CFF, and now I will be a bit more in on him this year. Again, he is following Matt Campbell from Iowa State to Penn State already, as we've mentioned a couple of times. Guys doing that beautiful. Hansen was RB 53 in fantasy points per game last year. And you might be saying to me, Jared, that doesn't sound super exciting. And don't get me wrong, I was a known hater on Hansen last offseason. But this man ended up getting a lot more volume than I expected. I was a really big hater on the fact that he didn't have a ton of volume the year before, and he was overproducing on touchdowns. I think he had 120 something carries, 11 touchdowns, just completely overproducing on the touchdown front. This year, he ended with 188 carries in 11 games. So if you give him 12 games of that pace would have gotten him 200 plus carries. That's solid volume. That's a clear RB1 for this system. And I was super impressed by that. And ironically, his problem this year was that he wasn't getting any touchdowns. He way underperformed this year, and the year before he way overperformed. According to my projections, he should have gotten about an extra 5 touchdowns last year. And had he done that, he would have cracked the top 36 running backs last year. So I think he gets that this year. I think going to Penn State, he's going to be the clear guy for Matt Campbell. Yes, I'm aware they have James People, who hasn't done anything in 2 years. Yes, I'm aware that they have Quentin Martin, who hasn't done anything in 2 years. Carson Hansen's going to be the main guy this year. The question of Peoples and Martin, they're going to be a next year deal. This will be Hansen's last year, right? Those guys will figure out the year after. Hansen's last year, it's his money year. Matt Campbell is going to reward this man. I think this is a really solid landing spot. I'll be in on Carson Hansen this year compared to last year when I was not so much in on him. What about you, Chris? What do you think here?
I'm kind of on the other side just because of how volume dependent Carson Hansen was last year. He started slow. Iowa State's first 6 games, he only had one 100-yard game during that stretch. He was averaging 13 rush attempts and putting up just over 10 fantasy points per game. It wasn't until the back half of the season for Iowa State that Carson Hansen was really starting to carry a heavy workload. The second half, he followed up with 5 straight 100-yard games, averaging 18.9 fantasy per game through that time. And he was averaging carries out of the back, 18 carries out of the backfield through that back end of the season. So I get what you're saying with that they're going to give him a bulk of the workload because it is his last year and he's following his head coach, which a lot of these guys tend to do. But if he doesn't get the receiving work, I don't think he's gonna hit what he's gonna be drafted at. I don't think he's gonna hit that ADP if he's going up at the top end. If he doesn't get the touchdowns, like you mentioned, if he gets the 6 to 7, 8 touchdowns, doesn't get the receiving work because James Peoples is there, Quentin Martin is there. Like you mentioned, they didn't do much in the past 2 years, but they're still on the squad. So I'd have to see him get early volume for me to be happy taking him in the top few rounds of my drafts. So I'm kind of stepping back a little bit on Carson Hansen, but I will have some shares of him.
I love guys who earn more volume as the year goes along. And that was my main thing,
point.
Right? Where again, you're right. If he had gone the entire season with, 10, 13 carries a game, the whole stretch and everything, and he did the same thing as he did the year before, right? Where his limited volume, but he was just scoring a lot of touchdowns and everything, I'd be in the exact same boat. I'd be like, I don't care that he's following his coach. He's going to get the same treatment. You give me a guy that, even though he started off slow, still ended the year with a pace to get over 200 carries. That sounds like a guy that's going to continue to get volume. And if he's volume dependent, that's fine. As long as he's getting that volume, I think he'll get that volume. So let's move on to the next guy. Speaking of volume dependent, Cam Cook, running back formerly out of Jacksonville State, now headed to West Virginia, led the nation in rushing last year with 1,572 rushing yards. Now the question becomes, can he come close to replicating that in the Big 12? Problem is, we've already seen him kind of flame out in the Big 12 already, right? We saw him try to be the RB1 for TCU 2 years ago. Just really did not work out, not efficient at all. But that would be 2 years ago now, right? He's grown. He's more experienced. He's handled a really big workload down there at Jacksonville State. Probably learned a lot with that. He's also now in a beautiful, beautiful system here with Rich Rodriguez. The ceiling here absolutely is the likes of Trey Stewart, who 2 years ago just blew open CFF. And really, it's what we should have gotten from Jaheim White last year. Rich Rod not afraid to have a workhorse back here. And given the fact that Cam Cook's coming in here, and this entire running back room cleared out because of this transfer. Jaheim White, gone. Dior Hubbard, gone. Ty Edwards, gone. Sincere Bowers, gone. All of them gone. Tells me that they were kind of being told, we're bringing in a guy to be the guy next year. We can't trust on any of you guys to stay healthy. We're bringing in Cam Cook, who literally just handled a workload of 200-something plus carries. They might have gotten 300. I can't remember off the top of my head. So the question remains, Chris. Are you in on Cam Cook having a rebound in the Big 12 here with West Virginia and Rich Rod?
Yeah, I'm in. I'm in on Cam Cook. He's one of the easier portal running backs, at least for me, to get excited about, because at Jacksonville State, it wasn't just volume that led to his 1,500. I think he had 276 touches out of the backfield. Just carries, not. I'm seeing that number. I don't know why I'm seeing that number. It's like a Miss Cleo thing, but I'm seeing 276, so it might be 276. But he was a playmaker, man.
295 in 13 games.
Okay, so I got to figure out what 276 was.
Might be regular season only.
Maybe, but he was
that was regular season only.
Okay, so so he was true playmaker. He led the NCAA in rushing yards. He led the league in missed tackles forced. He was top 2 with 23 runs of 15 or more yards. He led in runs over 10 yards, and his October was unreal. He put up 90 points in the month of October in just 3 games. That's the profile you want. What he was able to do game in and game out, I am excited for Cam Cook. I dove into a little bit of his TCU profile, and you're right. He did kind of flame out as a horned frog. But like you said, going to Jacksonville State, getting his feet under him, getting some confidence, and then going to West Virginia in this system, I'm excited for Cam Cook. I'm hoping that he doesn't get drafted too early, because then I might not be as excited for Cam Cook. But if I can get him at a good discount, also Scotty Fox is there. the quarterback. He's known to use his legs as well, which might take a little bit away from Cam Cook, but it's
Michael
a
Hawkins
clear,
too, but
yeah, exactly. It's a clear pathway to production for Cam Cook, and he's involved in the passing game as well. He's no slouch there, receiving the ball. So it's one of the cleaner draft and don't overthink it backs on the board for me. I think I'm going to have a lot of Cam Cook this year.
I'm not worried at all about the potential of a rushing quarterback here because, again, look at Rich Rod in 2024. Tyler Huff had 217 rush attempts. You know how many Trey Seward had? 280. Right, and then just this past year, Cam Cook almost 300 rushing attempts. Caden Creel 168 rushing attempts. Rich Rod can show that he's fine with a rushing quarterback. His guy's still going to get volume. Cam Cook has shown he's fine with a rushing quarterback. He just did it this past year, so not worried about that at all. In fact, I'm hoping whichever one of those better quarterbacks between Michael Hawkins or Scotty Fox wins out that job. And this offense is much better this upcoming year than it was this past year. So we will find out. Let's go ahead and move on here to Wayne Knight, the running back formerly of James Madison, headed over to UCLA once again, following a head coach here. He's moving up with Bob Chesney. There was talks a little bit about Wayne Knight being the guy to go to West Virginia, but no, that job goes to Cam Cook. Knight flips over here to UCLA. Big jump in competition here, obviously going from Sunbelt to UCLA, but a couple of good news. Obviously, like I said, following his head coach, there's mostly, Jags in that running back room. There's not really anybody you're really scared about. Most of the guys that you would be scared about are moving on. He'll have a very experienced quarterback in Nico at that level of competition to help him and the rest of that offense with that transition up. I think that'll help them kind of keep some drives alive that normally maybe wouldn't have if you had maybe Alonzo Barnett back there, who's also learning that level of competition, right? At the end of the day, this is a running back 20 in last year's CFF. I feel like this is going to end up being a pretty solid 4th, 5th round pick at running back. I don't know how other people are going to feel, but that's kind of the range I would be Wayne Knight in, just because he knows the system. UCLA, there's definitely going to be a bit of a learning curve. If we were still at James Madison, this guy'd be a second round pick for me in drafts. But I think you give him a 3-4 round, or about a 3-4 round discount compared to where you would have taken him at James Madison. You feel pretty good about it. How do you feel, Chris?
Yeah, I'm good. A little skeptical, but I'm good with the landing spot because everything you said there, he has the potential to be the guy for UCLA. Last season, he put up 1,400 all-purpose yards, nearly 40 reception. He finished top 5 in targets at the position. So this isn't a back you're hoping becomes a pass catcher because he's already there. He's the do-it-all back. The concern for me is what he's walking into. He's leaving a high-rated offensive line at JMU, and he's going to UCLA, whose offensive line last year was near the bottom of the league. I took a peek as well into how Nico Iamaleava, I totally butchered that, but that's okay.
Iamaleava.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you. How he liked to target his running backs under center. Last year, the running back room held a 19.2% team target share. With his one full year as the starter at Tennessee, it was worse at 9.2%. So at UCLA it was 19.2% last year. And then Nico at Tennessee was 9.2. It's a small sample. So the average for the running backs being targeted out of the backfield for Nico is about 14%. Not something I'm overly excited for, but I'd have to look into that a little bit more to see if it was either the quality of back, was it the game plan that was stopping Nico from checking down, was it a lot of just them chasing points, them looking to air the ball out? But if UCLA gives him the pass game role that I want, he's a weekly advantage, and him going in the 5th round is just perfect for there. If not, if he doesn't get that, he's a good player in a potential disaster situation because of the offensive line and everything else that UCLA might have or not have going on. So I'm excited for Wayne Knight at UCLA, but I'm also skeptical.
Yeah, they're bringing in looks like a decent amount from JMU to
JMU,
UCLA in
yeah.
terms of that offensive line. That was kind of the thing I was looking up here real quick. I know for a fact they're bringing what I believe is believe it or not, I don't memorize the names of every offensive lineman out there. Yeah, their left guard, Carter Swayze, is following them. They're bringing in a pretty highly rated guy in, where is he? Riley Robel. He's given a .88 rating by 247 in the transfer portal. So that's the James Madison inside offensive lineman that's following them to UCLA there.
So
They got
trying.
they got a tackle in JD Rayner. I don't think he started last year, but again, like decently rated by the transfer services. So again, they're bringing guys up. They're grabbing some other guys from other G5 programs. I saw a guy from South Alabama. I saw a guy from Eastern Michigan. Again, off the top of my head, I don't know if they were starters. I don't know if they were like all conference members or whatever. They're clearly bringing in a lot of bodies to put together a solid offensive line there. So I'm not as worried about that front. So
Talk me off the ledge, Jared.
There you go. That's what I try to do. I try to be the positive guy around here, which is going to be a problem because you're a pretty positive guy as well. So
Hey, I can play negative.
no, it's all good. Next guy up here, CJ Baxter, probably a guy that I think would both be, or I don't know, maybe I don't know about you, but like for me, this is probably the first guy that I'm a little negative about here. But also I understand the vision here. CJ Baxter, running back formerly of Texas, now going to Kentucky. On one hand, you gotta love that Will Stein, who's been responsible for the likes of, some ballers like Jordan James and who was RB23 in 2024. Bucky Irving was RB14 in 2023 for CFF. Like, Will Stein's been responsible for some ballers. This man went out and got Baxter over the likes of Indiana. Like, Indiana was looking at Baxter. Baxter chose Kentucky here. So that's a good sign to me. Right? But then you look at guys like Jordan James and Bucky Irving, and that's where the comparison seems to end a little bit. Because those guys relied on very hyper-efficient touches instead of volume. Which is where we get to the downside of Baxter. Even before his ACL tear, Baxter wasn't by any means the king of efficiency here. His freshman year, he had 4.8 yards per carry and 6.5 yards per catch. Chris, don't like that? Then you're really not going to like what he did this past year after coming back from that ACL tear, a good bit removed from that ACL tear, I might add as well. 3.6 yards per carry, 3.4 yards per catch this past year. Granted, limited opportunities. This season ended pretty quickly, but yikes. Yikes.
Mm-hmm.
So this all comes down to whether he can fix that efficiency or not. I'm personally not super optimistic, considering, he'll probably be on the worst team in the SEC this upcoming year. But just looking at raw numbers, my early projections kind of like him. If he can get to about 180 touches, that's a big if, though. So, Chris, your general thoughts on CJ Baxter going to Kentucky here?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with you. Who's one of the tougher evaluations in this whole portal class for me. The talent is obvious, but the workload outcome is not. Javonte Barnes from Oklahoma also transferred into UK. I'm not necessarily worried about that transfer in. I think CJ Baxter should be the RB1 for Kentucky. The bigger concern for me is the offensive coordinator and Joe Sloan. We've seen what he has the tendency to do with his running backs. Just last season, Caden Durham and Harlan Berry both split 100 carries. And in 2024, when he was promoted to the offensive coordinator for LSU, Caden Durham again and Josh Williams were nearly a 50-50 split. So that's not a one-off. That's a pattern. And if the pattern holds true going into Kentucky, I could see a situation where CJ Baxter and Javonte Barnes, or CJ Baxter and the next guy, are going to be sharing the role out of the backfield. This isn't a talent pick for me. It's a role risk, and I'm going to draft him accordingly at UK.
I agree. Again, this will very much come down to where is he getting drafted. I think if he's really in the top 7 rounds, I'd say I'm completely avoiding. I wouldn't want to be touching this until we get around to round 8, 9, 10. And again, we'll see how my rankings come out and everything, if I maybe even go lower than that. Next guy up here, Kendrick Raphael. Man, this one sucks, because you hate to see a guy who's leaving what seems to be a pretty solid situation there at Cal. But in my opinion, there's there's worse places where Raphael could have landed. One, you get the meme of the fact that Kendrick Raphael might be the first player in the history of college football to represent every coast in the Atlantic Coastal Conference. The man's playing on the East Coast, West Coast, now he's in the Gulf of Mexico. So you got all that. But then also, SMU has had a workhorse in the past 2 years, right? They definitely had one in Brashard Smith, who was a top 4 running back for CFF in 2024. Awesome there. They tried to do the same with TJ Harden. Didn't quite work out. I'm willing to bet that Raphael is going to end up being closer to Brashard, considering that, again, we saw him do pretty well this past year. I am very concerned, kind of like with CJ Baxter, about the efficiency here. Raphael only averaged about 4 yards a carry last year in the same conference. He'll once again be toting the rock in. That meant that he had to have well above 200 yards or 200 carries throughout the season to even get close to sniffing 1,000 yards there. I'm hoping that doesn't happen again here. Maybe his efficiency bumps up a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. Chris, where are you kind of falling with Kendrick Raphael here with SMU?
I'm kind of on the fence with the landing spot. I was hoping he'd stay at Cal and continue to be the guy, like you mentioned earlier. You like the guys that come on hot second half of the season, and that's exactly what he was at Cal. The first half he was barely startable. Second half he was averaging over 20 fantasy points per game, and we loved Kendrick Raphael. I just don't know what he's going to be role-wise at SMU. He could be a rotational back who's going to have spike weeks here and there, or he could be a guy who's the RB1 for SMU. I don't know how you feel about Jermichael Green, but I'm still a little bit of a Jermichael Green truther, and I'm hoping he can find his way at SMU this season. But if you want a back who can win you a week with touchdowns randomly here or there, Kendrick Raphael is probably the running back that you want to draft.
Yeah, I'm taking a look here. Jermichael Green, not super impressive last year, only 3.6 yards per attempt. But again, I obviously a freshman, lots of room to grow. Breakaway percentage wasn't great either. Derek McFall actually seems like to be the other guy to kind of keep an eye out here, because again, breakaway percentage for him was 53.4%. 5.4 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns compared to Jermichael Green's 1. Again, like we said, obviously things can change. Again, like lots of guys have huge jumps between years 1 and 2. But I feel like SMU doesn't go and get a guy like Raphael, who had nearly 1,000 yards last year, without the intention of, hey, let's make this guy the number 1 back. This is not a projection pick by SMU, right? It's not like TJ Harden, where they're looking at him being like, oh, he was just misused at UCLA. Let's bring him in and let's use him the right way. No, Raphael, they saw him used last year, and they said, we want that. And so I think he'll be the RB1. Pretty clearly, it's just a matter of what does that volume look like at the end of the day. Is it more of a TJ Harden, where you're looking at 170 carries in 13 games? Or are we looking at, a Brashard Smith where 232 carries in 14 games, right? We're going to find out. And I think a lot of it will have to do with that efficiency, right? Like if he's toting the rock at 4 yards a carry, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Derek McFall get a couple more carries, but we'll see. Next guy, speaking of guys leaving great situations to go to places that we feel very about, Evan Dickens, running back out formerly of Liberty, now headed over to Boston College. Dude was absolutely on fire last year, RB8 for CFF, RB7 in fantasy points per game. Dude, like, this was a true league winner down the stretch. Dude was just absolutely on fire for Liberty. As patriotic as you could get with that sentence. But now he's going to Boston College, where just from a football perspective, I don't think you could really feel great about that. But I will say this. Over the last 2 years, Bill O'Brien's been sneaky okay at running back for CFF, right? Turbo Richard, RB37 this past year. Kai Robichaux, the year before that, similar range. In the second half of 2023, he was right about that RB 35, 36 range in fantasy points per game in the second half after he took over the starting job of running back there. So there's hope for Dickens here, I would say, right? It's just a matter of, do we think that they brought him in to be the lead back, or do they bring him in to be a part of a rotational piece? Because I forgot to look this up ahead of time. Is Jordan McDonald still hanging around?
Believe so.
This group. I need to find that real quick. I'll let you give your thoughts real quick, Chris, while I look that up real quick.
Evan Dickens. I hated Evan Dickens last year, Jared, and all my homies hated Evan Dickens, but not because he was bad, but because we just didn't know enough about him during the early draft season. And then I missed out on him on waivers a lot of the time. And he had me holding the silver medal in a lot of the leagues I was in where I went up against Evan Dickens. Because I think in that championship weekend, he put up 55 points, if I'm not mistaken, or something along the lines like that. So he had me feeling sick. I was disgruntled. I was sad, melancholy. It was the whole thing for me.
52.8 fantasy points, by the way.
Yeah, which, I mean, if you rostered Evan Dickens and Caleb Hawkins on your team going into the championship weekend, I don't even think you needed to start anybody else. You could have just sat the rest of your team and just started those two guys. Yeah, but he moves to Boston College, like you said. It's a sneaky spot. We saw Turbo Richard last year start hot, falter in the middle of the season where he was only averaging about 6.4 fantasy points per game in that middle block. And then at the back half of the season, I think the last 3 games, he got hot again. So my expectations for him are still going to be ADP driven, like a lot of these unknown situational running backs that we've talked about here. I'm not forcing it if the price climbs. The talent's obviously there. I just don't know if the role is going to be there. I'm hoping he can get a little bit more involved in the pass game as well, just because I'm unsure if he's going to get the volume that he got at Liberty, at Boston College. If he's getting the passing work early, if the reports are coming out of camp that, hey, this guy is going to be the guy for Bill O'Brien and Boston College, I am buying. If not, I'm treating him like a spike week stash. And that feels kind of dirty to say, given what he gave us last year.
Yeah, yes, I did confirm that Jordan McDonald is back for Boston College this upcoming year, which definitely throws a little bit of a wrench in the assumption that, Dickens is clearly RB1. But I will also say this. Jordan McDonald hasn't been great in most of his career. Again, in 3 of his 4 years so far, Jordan McDonald has averaged less than 4.3 yards per attempt. He only had the one really spike year, which was his first year at Boston College. But other than that, career-wise, he's had an 18.6% breakaway percentage, which is not good. You normally want to see that above 30%. Meanwhile, Evan Dickens, much more explosive. Obviously, there's a big jump in competition here, so you may expect Dickens to not be able to rip off as many long plays as he was down there at CUSA. But at the same time, McDonald's not getting the job done, at least of right now. I would maybe rely on Dickens a little bit more here, but like you said, mostly this is going to come down to price. So, all right, let's keep the negative going here, because boy, I don't like this other situation either here. Let's talk about the 2 Texas running backs here. Some of you might be surprised that we're not talking about these guys higher, because the Sarkisian RB1 has been a mainstay of CFF for God knows how long. I mean, how many years did Steve Sarkisian have a 1,000-yard running back in a row while he was in college? Like, that was the whole thing. Well, that didn't happen this past year, and Texas seems like they're making sure that doesn't happen again this year. This started off so well. The 2 running backs, by the way, for those of you who don't know, we're talking about Raleek Brown, former Arizona State running back, and then Hollywood Smothers, former running back out of NC State. They're both headed to Texas. These 2 were in such good positions. You had Raleek Brown coming to Texas. Going to be the main guy. It's going to be great. Hollywood Smothers committed to Alabama. That seemed like great because Alabama desperately needs a good running back. We could have had 2 workhorse backs here, but no. Texas had to get greedy, and now both of these guys lose value. Because, like I said, as much as Steve Sarkisian loves his 1,000-yard backs, Chris, how can you tell which of these 2 guys is going to be that guy this year, if there even is one, right? You look at how they were used at their previous stops, and it's so similar. They're solid receiving backs, which is obviously really good for a Steve Sarkisian back, and also neither one of them are used as goal line guys. So you can't even really divvy up the roles that these guys are going to play in this offense. they're both similarly sized for the most part as well. So it's like, it feels like Texas is double dipping here, and it's just going to get super annoying for at least one of these guys, if not both. How are you navigating this, Chris?
I loved the landing spot for Smothers at Alabama. I was like, Alabama's going to heal their running back woes of last season and bring in a dynamic playmaker, someone who has the juice out of the backfield, a pass catching running back. They're going to be able to do a lot of good things with Smothers. And then Raleek Brown at Texas, I was excited for that as well. Them trying to fix their running back woes with injuries. So I kind of get it for Texas. Because of the injuries that they've been dealt with the last few seasons, with the running backs. Wisner went down for a bit. Baxter went down for the whole season. He got hurt in camp there. But like you said, their value takes a big hit for both of them, both going to Texas. And not only are they going to a team similar profile guys like you mentioned, but they're going to a team where again, the quarterback held the bulk of the rushing touchdowns. Once Arch Manning got into the money zone, the red zone for Texas, if he didn't see his first, second read open, he was dashing for the end zone. So does not spell a lot of good things for these two running backs. And then even just receiving wise, last year, the position with Arch Manning under center full time only saw a 13.4% target share out of the backfield. So the fact that both of these guys have that same profile, I'm not expecting them to see a whole lot of work when it comes to catching the ball. If it was one of them, if it was just Raleek Brown, I'm excited. If it was just Hollywood Smothers, I'm smitten. But at this point, I'm taking whichever one is cheaper, and I'm not chasing either of them.
Is there a world where Texas is just indomitable next year, and both of these guys end up with, 10, 11, 12 touchdowns, and maybe not 1,000 yards each, but they're both, getting above 800 rushing yards in the regular season kind of deal, just because Texas is running up and down the field on people. I mean, that's where we're kind of headed. I mean, Texas looks really good going into next year. They're definitely pushing for a championship run in Arch's final year here in college. What percentage would you put that likelihood at, Chris, off the top of your head?
I would say 30% that they both have years like that they both put up double-digit touchdowns, that they both put up 18 to 25 receptions out of the backfield. They both put up 750 to 850 rushing yards and 250 to 350 receiving yards. It's not something that I want to predict, and it's not something that I'm going to attach my wagon to with my fantasy team. So I don't know where you're at with it. I'd love to hear where you're at with that kind of of situation. But for me, it's not going to happen.
I think it's 15-20%. I like you said, I think Arch Manning is like
so high. Yeah.
No, you're higher than me. I put it at 15-20%. Like, I think it's a possibility, but like Arch sucking up all those touchdowns. I've got Arch as a top 2 quarterback going into next year, which might sound crazy, but like I think Texas will score a lot of points, and I think Arch Manning's going to be a big part of that. They're going to push for a Heisman campaign for him next year, especially with the improvements we saw from him down the stretch. And like again, so much has to go right for the running backs at that point. Arch has to not steal touchdowns. They have to not try to feed guys like Cam Coleman, Ryan Wingo. Like, they're gonna have so many guys, and it's gonna be a mess for CFF. It's gonna be one of those teams where they're scoring a lot of points, but boy, you have no idea who's gonna score each week. So we'll see. Last guy we'll spotlight here before we start going rapid fire on these guys. Talk about Makhi Hughes, the disappearing man himself, after breaking so many hearts last year, being drafted in the first round. Man, I said last year that, like, oh man, I can't draft a G5 to P4 running back in the first round of CFF drafts, especially a guy going from, the American up to the Big Ten and everything. Never in my wildest dreams would I've pictured it would have just crashed and burned like it did. Like like nobody could have saw that coming. Like everything seemed like it was set for Makhi Hughes will be the guy, if not like just a big part of a committee. Nobody expected him to be done after 4 games. Regardless of what happened last year, he's going to Houston now. And he's reuniting with Willie Fritz, a former coach of his. I was wondering if Jaden Baugh left Florida, if Makhi Hughes would not have been the first person that Buster Faulkner and John Summerall would have ended up calling. But obviously they get Baugh to stay. So Hughes now goes to Houston here, reunites with Willie Fritz. Last time they worked together, Makhi Hughes ran for 1,241 yards. In the regular season, 7 touchdowns. He finished as the RB 43 in that year, but which is kind of crazy considering the fact that he ran for 1,200 yards, but he didn't have a lot of receiving work under Willie Fritz. So I guess and not a ton of touchdowns, which kind of explains it. But still, fact is, last time we worked together, he was a 1,200 yard back. And given the fact that Dean Connors very quietly finished as the RB 41 last season, and he's not your typical prototype like workhorse back for the most part, I think it's a pretty good chance that Hughes easily beats that. And I think Hughes will end up being a very nice, safe draft pick for a lot of people this year. I think it's a really good landing spot for him. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I like the landing spot. Like you said, he's following his former coaches, offensive coordinators there as well. And we saw what he was able to do under this tutelage at Tulane. So I like the landing spot. You mentioned D. Connor's output, 1,000 all-purpose yard. Too many words in one. 1,000 all-purpose yard back for Houston. He saw a good amount of targets out of the backfield. Again, different coaching staff. So the thing for me with Makhi Hughes is, could he potentially be the Byron Brown for drafters this year, in the sense that Byron Brown, the year before 2024, the 2023 season, dominated. Then the year after, fell off a cliff a little bit, dealt with some injuries, wasn't the dominant player that people were drafting him to be. And then we saw last year, he finished as the QB1, correct?
Yes, sir.
Overall. So Makhi Hughes can potentially be that same guy for people that draft Makhi Hughes. Dominated one year, fell off a cliff last year at Oregon. You said after 4 games. I mean, he was non-existent after his first game. Mm-hmm. There was no Makhi Hughes. And then he's going to Byron Brown didn't hop programs. He stayed at the one spot, but Makhi Hughes is now going back to Houston with familiarity at the coaching position. I like it, and he's the kind of player that, with the value that you're potentially getting Makhi Hughes at, could make or break your draft if you decide to take him a little later, if he's there sitting for you. If you're taking him as your RB5 or 6, if he's there at that point, you should be paid off handsomely with Makhi Hughes. I'm excited, but I'm also hesitant. I own a lot of them. I have a lot of shares of Makhi Hughes in my C2C league, so he was kind of one of those players that it was hard to move off of because of either the price I spent on him, and I didn't want to let him go for pennies on the dollar. So I'm hoping that he can gain some momentum and be the guy that we know he can be at Houston.
I mean, I agree 100%. Like, if there's a bounce back candidate, everything's lining up for Makhi Hughes here going to Houston. I don't really have much else to offer on that. I think the question then becomes about cost, right? Because we're all going to be real smart. Like, we got the way too early draft coming up. I'm going to be very curious to see where Makhi Hughes goes in that draft, because I think I can still stomach the idea of him being as high as a 3rd round pick, but only in a scenario. I see your eyes bugging out of your head because, again, like, you're kind of hoping that maybe he goes a little bit later. But here's my thought, right? I'm really big on what I call the baseball lineup strategy in CFF, especially at the running back position, where you grab two really safe guys, and then that third running back is like you try to make that your power hitter. They're either striking out or you're hitting it over the fence. That's what Makhi Hughes fits to a T. If you grab two safe running backs and you go in the third round with Makhi Hughes, I'm okay with that. If you grab Makhi Hughes in the third round, he's your first running back for your team. I don't like that. This is a strategy. This is going to be a guy that I think is strategy based in terms of where he goes in the draft. That's all I would have to add with Makhi Hughes there. Alrighty. We're going to take a quick break here real quick. Our Lord and Savior over at Campus of Canton, Austin Nace, has a couple of quick things to say about some of our sponsors. So we're going to throw it over to him, and then we'll be right back with you guys with a ton of more running backs that we're going to go rapid fire through. So see y'all in about 90 seconds.
Hey guys, Austin here to talk for a brief moment about Homefield Apparel, the best place to snag clothing for all my favorite schools and teams. Whether it's tees, sweatshirts, hats, joggers, or pretty much anything in between, Homefield Apparel has retro designs with a modern twist to satisfy fans from Ohio State to Drexel to Colorado School of the Mines. Plus, it's some of the comfiest clothing that I own. Use our promo code CAMPUS2CANTON, that's campus, the number 2 Canton at checkout, for 15% off your first purchase. What's up, guys? Austin here again to let you know about our partnership with FASTDRAFT, a best ball and DFS platform that hosts a ton of different contests. With the season over and season-long CFF best ball behind us, I know I'm looking for new contests that can scratch my drafting itch, and I think I have found just the thing. FASTDRAFT has a rookie-only contest called Origins. Each draft has 8 teams in it and is 6 rounds long. And as I mentioned earlier, you only draft incoming 2026 rookies. I know I plan on max entering this thing, and I think it's going to be a ton of fun. So head on over to FASTDRAFT, and when you sign up, use code C2C, that's C2C, for a deposit match up to $50. Happy drafting.
All right, we are back, and let's flip it on over here. Like I said, if you've watched this show before, you guys know that, again, I got 5 guys up on the screen. Actually, more than that, because I'm combining a lot of these guys, if multiple guys are going to the same spot here. So I'll run through these guys real quick. We got the 2 Liberty guys, Justin Marshall out of Colorado State and Cam Davis out of Florida State. Marshall's definitely shown some flashes. Cam Davis, I remember he's a 5-star or 4-star running back, but definitely high blue chip running back, headed over to Liberty. Duke Watson, the former running back out of Louisville, headed over to UCF. Jaden Lamar, one of the Oregon running backs, headed out of that logjam they had over there. He's headed to Washington. We got Fame Ijiaboy. I 100% butchered that, but he is the Minnesota running back who took over for Darius Taylor at times this year, headed over to Purdue. And then our man, Jaheim White, headed from West Virginia to North Texas. Chris, I'll do the same thing I did with Nate. I'll let you drive here. Pick a couple guys here that you wish to talk about.
For me, if I'm excited for Jaheim White at North Texas. Stepping down from West Virginia to North Texas, we've seen what he was able to do out of the backfield at West Virginia. So him going to a role where he has the potential to be the RB1 on a team that has all the potential to be really good at North Texas. I mean, I know they lost their quarterback, they lost their coaching staff, they lost their star running back. So it's wide open for Jaheim White to really take that role and run for North Texas. So he's the one guy that I'm hyper excited for. I'm gonna own a lot of Jaheim White. I'll have no problem going up and reaching for him. Of course, camp news and spring practices and everything is gonna hold a lot of weight for me with how I'm gonna value these guys. But for the others, like Cam Davis and Justin Marshall at Liberty, it's gonna be tough to decide which one I'm going to pinpoint to be the lead guy for Liberty. We talked about Evan Dickens, and we saw what he was able to do last year. Which one of these guys is going to be the guy to step up and take over that role for Liberty? Duke Watson, not a guy that has a lot of big play potential, 3.2 yards per rush last year for Louisville. So I'm unsure what he's going to be at UCF. So I'm not overly excited for that one as well. We know Jonah Coleman is leaving Washington. I think Adam Mohammed is leaving Washington as well. So it's open for Limar to have the potential RB1 role over there. So he's going to have some big time production if he can lock down the top running back role. And then the I don't want to butcher his name twice in one show, but let's go for it. Fame Ijiboy at Purdue. I just don't know enough about him to say, yeah, I'm overly excited for this guy. So if I was to rank these running backs based on the order I would take them in drafts, it would be Jaheim White. Ooh, I want to put one of the Liberty guys right behind Jaheim White. I just don't know which one to pinpoint there. So Jaheim White. Let's go Limar, because if he gets the RB1 role at Washington, there's a clear pathway for production there. Then I'll go Justin Marshall, Cam Davis. I'll cheat and put them both in the same bucket. Duke Watson, and then I'll go Fame.
By the way, I just listened. Minnesota's beautiful. They have a pronunciation on his page, and it is Fame Ijiboy.
Fame. Oh, there you go.
I had the first name right. I can't remember if I got his last name right or not, but we got to figure it out now.
Close enough.
Yeah. Again, there's a reason why all of these guys are probably one of the first ones that we'll talk about in this segment. I think all of these guys have potential for sure. UCF or Duke Watson there at UCF, I think is interesting because again, both Miles Montgomery and Jaden Nixon are gone. Duke Watson very much feels like a solid Jaden Nixon replacement where, may not be the most efficient down to down, but boy, he could take it to the house from anywhere on the field. That's how he was at Louisville, except for this last year. So we'll see how that goes. Not much competition there. So is he going to get the Anthony Grant treatment, or is he going to be relegated to that secondary back role like Jaden Nixon was? We'll find out. The two Liberty guys with Justin Marshall and Cam Davis, I think it's hard, right? Because Evan Dickens was great last year, but Evan Dickens didn't come on until like the second half of the season.
Yeah.
Right. So it very much could be like both these guys start out splitting the carries and then, things kind of develop from there. And then I'll talk about Jaheim White here. It really, to me, like as I was writing down notes, I realized this quickly became a game of good news, bad news with Jaheim White. Because it seems great on paper. So like good news, Jaheim White reunites with Neil Brown, like former West Virginia coach. That's great. Bad news, Jaheim White's coming off an ACL tear. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Good news. Little to no competition here. We got one running back coming in from Mizzou, a 3-star running back in the transfer portal. Otherwise, every other running back that was on this team has transferred out. Bad news. We haven't seen a workhorse back with Neil Brown like Letty Brown was since 2021. So it's been 5 years since we've seen a running back of that caliber with Neil Brown. Good news. The fact is that Neil Brown's capable of a workhorse back, so he can go back to that if he needs to. Bad news. North Texas is in a complete full rebuild here.
Yeah.
Good news. This is also a drop in competition for White, so maybe even coming off the ACL tear, then maybe that doesn't matter. Like I said, back and forth. I'll be curious to see where he goes in drafts because, again, I think it's not quite a slam dunk thing, but it is there. And then Fame Ijiboy, I'm going to comment on all of these guys. I find this one interesting as well because I think he got a taste of being an RB1 in Minnesota last year. Darius Taylor comes back, and then he immediately transfers. I said to myself when he transferred, I'm like, he's got to be going somewhere where he'll start. Otherwise, why not just be content with being Minnesota's RB2? Darius will probably get hurt at some point. You'll get your touches at that point. I think he'll go to Purdue and start there. So we'll see where it goes from there. Let's move on to our next 5 running backs here. We got Trey Wisner, the former Texas running back, former lead running back for Texas this year. Probably the worst lead back running back that Texas has had in quite a bit. He is headed over to Florida State. Then we got 2 running backs headed to Kansas in Dylan Edwards and Yassine Willis. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out. You got Cameron Edwards, a former top 12 running back from this past year at UConn. He is transferring out, obviously, with the loss of Jim Mora, and he is headed to Michigan State, unfortunately not following Jim Mora to Colorado State. We also have Adam Muhammad, who is set to become the RB1 for Washington this year, decides to go his own way, and he is headed over to Cal with the new coaching staff over there, which, by the way, very similar to Georgia Tech. I looked at the offensive coordinator they hired. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but basically no play calling experience at the college level either. And so, once again, we have no clue what that offense is going to look like. And then we got the 2 potential candidates to replace Jarius Taylor, who was a top 10 running back for CFF this past year over at Virginia, in Peyton Lewis, the former running back out of Tennessee, and Ja'Kai Middlebrook, the running back out of Middle Tennessee State. Both of those guys headed in there to Virginia. So, Chris, start us off, man. Who do you want to discuss?
I mean, I was so excited. I was ready to lead off this segment talking about Yassine Willis landing at Kansas and how excited I was to have the potential to roster him on that team and see him, produce as an RB1 as a Jayhawk. And then in the Slack chat today, heart absolutely broken seeing Dylan Edwards transfer in to Kansas as well. So that was a little bit of a steam stealer for me. So that situation just got a whole lot murkier. Both good backs, both CFF potential RB1s or back end RB2s for you if there was no other competition. But I'm gonna lead off with saying that I think Ja'Kai Middlebrook is going to have a big season at Virginia. He's moving up. Peyton Lewis is no slouch at Tennessee. I was high on Ja'Kai going into last year, and he did great things for my fantasy teams. Over 1,100 all scrimmage yards. He was a beast in the passing game. He really came on the season. So I'm expecting him to have a good year at Virginia. And then Wisner, I'm still an Usmani Chroma guy. So seeing Wisner come over from Texas to Florida State kind of hurt my optics on, or kind of blurred my optics on what Usmani Chroma was going to be going into this year. It kind of made me a little bit skeptic on what he could be for Florida State. Granted, he was a freshman last year coming into this year. He should have a little bit more of a role, but Wisner got paid to come into Florida State, and he's expected to be the guy. And then Adam Muhammad at Cal, if Adam Muhammad could give us 80% of what Raphael was at Cal, I think I'll take that, and I won't mind reaching up for that production. And then Cam Edwards at Michigan State coming from UConn is another big move. This list is a lot sexier than the last one that we just talked about. I think we'll see a lot more fantasy production from this group of running backs, even though there's 2 situations, Kansas and Virginia, that are a little bit murkier than the other ones. But I like this list a lot better. If I'm ranking them based on CFF production, I want to put Middlebrook up there, but I'm going to go Wisner, the Virginia backfield, the Kansas backfield, Cam Edwards, and then Adam Muhammad. But they're all very close to being in the same bucket for me.
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on all these guys, and I'll try to be as quick as I can here. I'll just go left to right here. Trey Wisner. Gus Malzahn RB1s have been so great for CFF in recent years. Last year, they were not. Despite there being, in my opinion, a solid amount of options for just anybody, to emerge out of that backfield with, between Sawchuck, between Chroma, between somebody at some point during the season, like, hey, take this job and run with it, and nobody ever did. Now they're bringing in Wisner, who just wasn't great at Texas last year. And, I have to think he'll be the RB1 because, again, they should be paying a decent amount because The rumor is that Wisner asked Texas for $1 million, and Texas said, I don't know. They basically just gave him a giant middle finger, told him to hit the portal. And so now he's going to Florida State, where, they've not been good with roster management whatsoever. And they're like, yeah, we'll pay this guy $1 million. We'll see if that works out for them. I'm skeptical. At Kansas, I guess I'm not as worried about the Dylan Edwards thing. Feels like that Dylan Edwards got a huge dose of reality last year of you're not going to be a workhorse back ever. And he's ticked off by that staff. I doubt he's going to Lance Leopold. Lance Leopold loves his big backs. You seen Willis? 6'1", 235 pounds. That's a dude that can handle some workload. Dylan Edwards, not so much. 5'9", 175. It is two very, very different backs there. And I think if I had to bet on one, I'm going to go with Yassine Willis. Even though Willis hasn't been super, super great in terms of efficiency by any stretch, I think Lance Leopold's the kind of guy that could unlock something there. Cam Edwards, just not an ideal landing spot in my opinion. I'm not super sold on Michigan State being good year one. He's only got the 1 year left, so we'll see where that goes from there. Ad Muhammad, I have to imagine he's getting a workhorse load at Cal, whatever offensive system they're going to try to run there, because why would you give up being RB1 at Washington if you weren't going to get that kind of job elsewhere? At least that's my thought process. I don't know what's going on in his head. We'll see. I don't think either of the Virginia backs are going to be that great for CFF. I think it'll be a split workload. That's what Tony Elliott's kind of been doing over the years, and last year is definitely an exception. You would have to see Lewis or Middlebrook just vastly outperform the other one in practice. And if I start getting worried about that, maybe then I start changing my tune. But they also bring in Solomon Beebe from UAB, who I didn't include in this list here. Them bringing in three backs like that, I think is kind of screaming they're going to go committee. And if somebody emerges, they emerge. Awesome. If not, we'll see. Move on to our next. Oh, did you have any other thoughts, by the way? Want to respond to any of that?
No, you're good.
Just want to make sure before we moved on. All right, next crop of running backs here. This is where things I think start getting real up in the air with some of these running backs, and that is, we'll start with Ashton Gray, the running back formerly of North Texas, headed to East Carolina. This is admittedly one that I pushed in here because I really want to talk about this. Dallin Hayden, former running back, former 4-star running back of Ohio State and Colorado, now headed back home to Memphis, where presumably you would think he would be the RB1 there. Turbo Richard, we talked about him earlier when we talked about Boston College. He is now headed to Indiana. Indiana's been great. They are not great for CFF running back production. Bryson Washington, former running back out of Baylor, former first-round pick last year for CFF. Disappointed. Yeah. He's now headed to Auburn under Alex Golesh. We'll see how that works out. And then Sutton Smith, former running back of Memphis, following his head coach Ryan Silverfield from Memphis to Arkansas. Jumping competition there. Chris, we could go a bunch of different directions with these guys. What do you got?
It's just a group of running backs that I'm not sure I'm going to have too much of. I kind of like Sutton Smith following his coach, going to Arkansas there to be the potential RB1 for that squad. Bryson Washington, absolutely heartbreaking season last year. Wasn't the guy that we were hoping to be or picking him to be at Baylor, him moving to Auburn. A lot of these guys are going to be news guys. What's the news coming out in spring camps? What's the news coming out in the spring games? What are we hearing about the potential of their roles in their offenses? We've seen, like you mentioned, we've seen what Turbo Richard could do or did do at Boston College last year. Is he going to be able to replicate that at Indiana? I don't know. I don't think so. Dallin Hayden at Memphis is another interesting one. He wasn't explosive at Colorado, but going to Memphis to potentially be either share the backfield there or be some kind of producer is a little interesting. I might take him at the back end of drafts, but none of these guys are screaming value to me. I mean, I have to hear what you got to say about Ashton Gray, but the other four aren't really screaming. These guys are transferring to be the RB1 on their new programs.
System-wise, I just can't love Triple Richard going to Indiana or Bryson Washington going to Auburn. Like,
Yeah.
I like the talents, but again, like those are two systems that are known for splitting carries between different guys. I mean, Auburn, you can love Bryson Washington all you want, but God, what's his name? I forget off the top of my head. God, brain fart. This is what happens when I record late. Jeremiah Cobb. Jeremiah Cobb's still hanging around. They also bring in Davenport from South Florida. Like that's ripe for a split backfield over there. Indiana, we know for a fact, like Kobe Martin will be back next year. Like they're gonna split the backfield between him and Turbo Richard. They were also shopping around for multiple other backs as well. So yeah, I'm not loving that situation. Ashton Gray. Let's talk about Ashton Gray.
Let's hear it.
I do not know what to expect from Jordan Davis as offensive coordinator at East Carolina. For those of you who don't know who Jordan Davis is, no, it is not the giant defensive tackle of the Philadelphia Eagles. That is the offensive coordinator here. Different Jordan Davis. This is the offensive coordinator who was under Eric Morris at North Texas the last couple of years. How about you guys? I've mostly been chalking up that North Texas offense to Eric Morris for the most part. I'm like, okay, this is Eric Morris' system. However, Jordan Davis and Eric Morris are now splitting. Eric Morris, obviously the head coach over at Oklahoma State. Jordan Davis, now the offensive coordinator at East Carolina. And Jordan Davis, interestingly enough, does seem to have some pretty big sway because he got not just one, not just two, but three of North Texas's offensive pieces to follow him to East Carolina. And pretty big ones, in my opinion. One, including three-star quarterback Chasten Ditta. You also get wide receiver Landon Sides following him from North Texas to East Carolina. But the most important of the three, in my opinion, might be Ashton Gray here, who is RB2 towards the end of the season after Mackenzie McGill kind of went down. Gray was great, even behind Caleb Hawkins here. He averaged 6.5 yards per carry, had 3.78 yards per contact per carry. Had a 50.1% breakaway percentage. Like, this dude was quietly really solid and was just kind of overshadowed by Caleb Hawkins. And I said when he transferred, I'm going to keep an eye on where he lands because I think he's a really good back. And now he's landing with his former OC in the American Athletic contest. No jumping competition here. I have no clue if Jordan Davis is going to go the workhorse route we saw with Caleb Hawkins last year. But given the price that I expect kind of Gray to be going, especially early on the season, I'll take the shot on that. I'll take the shot on potentially him following his coach and just saying like, all right, give me what you gave Caleb Hawkins last year. We'll see where he goes. Because East Carolina, London Montgomery, gone, transferred. Parker Jenkins, gone, transferred. Marlon Gunn, done, out of eligibility. Backfield's wide open.
Wide open.
So... Again, I can go double check to make sure they didn't bring in any other running backs real quick. Actually, I should probably do that real quick just to make sure I'm not actively forgetting about anybody. Yeah, Parker Jenkins out, Leonard Montgomery out. Oh yeah, they bring in Michael Allen from Marshall. I think Ashton Gray is a better running back. Just my own personal opinion. But any other thoughts on that, Chris? Or are we ready to move on?
Nope, good to go.
All right. We got two more of these pages to get through. We'll start with the absolute logjam of transfer running backs coming in here at Wisconsin. On one hand, this is a system we like with Jeff Grimes, right? Like, Jeff Grimes has produced some really solid RB1s over the years, but man, it's an island of misfit toys over there right now at the running back position. You got Abu Sama III coming in from Iowa State, Nate Palmer from TCU, Brian Jackson from USC. Add in the fact that Dalen Dupree is already there for Wisconsin. Like, Chris, I don't know about you. What are we doing there, man? We got KD Daniels, a former four-star running back, headed from Florida to Wake Forest. Wake Forest's backfield is wide open. Obviously, they lose Damon Claiborne. We'll see how that goes. Tulsa is adding two interesting running backs here in Damari Alston, the former running back out of Auburn, as well as DJ McKinney, the very explosive running back of New Mexico, and before that, Sam Houston State. You got Saladin Allah, a young running back that we liked at Oregon State. He is transferring out. He's headed over to Iowa State. And you got Victor Rosa, running back out of UConn, headed over to Ohio, who will definitely try to challenge Duncan Brune, the young running back there at Ohio. Chris, how are you handling all these situations?
I'm probably not touching Rosa. He hasn't produced much in his collegiate career, so he's probably just a guy that I'm just not gonna touch. Out of all these backfields, I'm kind of excited for Abu Sama at Wisconsin. I know Nate Palmer's there, Brian Jackson there as well, but we saw what Abu Sama was able to do in relief when Carson Hansen went down at Iowa State last year. He came in, he was able to give you 100-yard games. He was decent for college fantasy managers who were able to either claim him off waivers or just plug him into the lineup when Carson Hansen was down. So he's the one guy in that backfield that I'm kind of excited for on this whole list. Really, Katie Daniels at Wake Forest is a little. I'm a little enticed, but I'm not overly enthused to draft Damari Alston, DJ McKinney. You know, who's going to be that guy for Tulsa, and how much of the role of the backfield is he going to have? What's his share going to be coming out of that backfield? And then a la Iowa State, I'm gonna have to see what his role is gonna be in that offense. So all these guys here, I'm probably not touching any of them outside of maybe Abu Sama, and then whoever's gonna be the guy who holds the most shares out of the backfield for Tulsa.
Yeah, I think the Tulsa backfield is definitely an interesting one because again, we didn't think about it last year, but Dominic Richardson coming out, he didn't finish great on the season, but he got the volume, so it's very clear that they're willing to do a workhorse back there. Alston wasn't really a bad back at Auburn, so I think it's interesting that he's transferring down a level of competition here. I think he's definitely somebody I'll take a couple of shots on later on. I want to believe in Allah. I just take that quote out of context. But like at Iowa State, I just don't know if they're going to recover year one with how much they lost to Penn State and everything. That sorry, this is such a funny quote. I think Iowa State's gonna be bad next year, and so like Allah's gonna have a rough time there. And then the Wisconsin backfield, man, like like I said, it's just an island of misfit toys. Like it's just so many guys that are like post hype guys. Like Abusam was so big. Nate Palmer was big last year. Brian Jackson, people were kind of talking about it a little bit. He's the RB2 at USC. Now he's going to come here and probably be the RB4 Wisconsin. I don't know, man. Like it's just a mess of a backfield over there. I think they're just hoping somebody breaks out between all of them. We'll see.
Yeah. Sama is definitely my Charlie in the box. So I'm excited for that one.
There you go. There we go. Just keeping the metaphor going. All right. Last group of 5 that we'll really get into here that have actually found destinations, and then I'll kind of mention some honorable mentions of the honorable mentions that we won't discuss, but I figured you guys might want to know. We'll start with Jamari Wilcox, the running back out of Kentucky, now headed over to Marshall. Marshall lost their top 2 running backs in Antoine Roberts and Michael Allen, so that backfield's wide open. John Bray Dubar, Breezy Dubar, former running back out of Boise State, had some hype for a little bit. Got overshadowed by a very talented backfield. No shame there. He's headed over to Missouri State, whose backfield is very wide open. Roderick Robinson, the former 4-star running back out of Georgia, transferring down to UAB, so dropping a level of competition there into another wide open backfield. That'll be interesting. Christian Clark, running back out of Texas. A lot of people were kind of expecting him to take a big step until they signed Hollywood Smothers, and Clark hit the portal very soon after that. He is headed over to South Carolina. And then we have the group of running backs headed over to UConn. UConn lost pretty much everything when it came to running backs with the loss of Jim Mora. So, of course, they had to restock that room. We know Jason Candle is willing to have a workhorse back. The question is that workhorse back amongst this group of 3 guys?
Yeah.
We'll find out. Chris, what are your general thoughts on all these guys?
I don't got too many thoughts with this group. Of course, Jam Wilcox at Marshall and the potential there with how wide open the room is. I like Roderick Robinson stepping down from Georgia to UAB. A lot of potential for him to produce there as well. Christian Clark going to South Carolina. Even James Dubar. We saw James Dubar flash in spurts at at Boise State. So him going from Boise to Missouri State, there's potential there. But again, what's Missouri State going to be? Are they going to be chasing points? Is he going to have the opportunity to carry a healthy workload for them out of the backfield? What's his ultimate role going to be on that team? So again, if I'm sitting on the clock and I'm looking for a running back to fill out my running back room, I got a solid group of guys, and I maybe want to grab a guy that could give me a few boom weeks. I'm probably chasing Roderick Robinson out of the group. Are you, Jared?
Yeah, I my thing is that seeing Roderick Robinson drop down to UAB tells me that his medicals probably aren't doing great.
That's fair.
Right, like, because I know for a fact he looked at spots like returning home to UCLA, places like that, and if he's not landing at one of those spots, that tells me that they probably checked him out and they're not excited about what they see. UAB, it's one of those things of like, what other choice they got? And it's a low risk, high upside play for them, right? Like, if Robinson comes in, he's healthy, they've got a former 4-star running back at UAB, and maybe that's the same way people got to be treating it in CFF, right? I cannot imagine Roderick Robinson's going to go super high in draft. So if you think that you want to take that shot super late as like your 8th, 9th, 10th running back off the board, and you're just saying like, I might get a former 4-star running back at UAB, sure, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. As long as that's where he stays. The UConn thing is going to be interesting to me. It's Trey Cornice. He was solid at Central Michigan. Kenji Christian following Jason Candle from Tulane, I think gives him a little bit of leg up. Bowers looked good at times at West Virginia, but like, it's probably going to be one of those things where if there's a workhorse in that group, it's probably not going to be somebody who emerges until in the season, I think. And then I have no good things to say about Jamari Wilcox and the things that he is accused of, so I will not continue to comment on that.
Okay.
Anyway, a couple other guys I'm just going to throw out there. We won't discuss them, but I think you guys should know. Javen Gordon, the former RB1 out of Tulane, is headed over to Tennessee, likely going to be the backup to Deshaun Bishop there. Davian Gauss, the one of my big disappointments last year out of UNC, he is headed over to NC State. I think he'll end up being the backup to Duke Scott there. Harry Dalton, the former 4-star running back out of USC, is headed over to Maryland. I think he'll back up Williams there. Jabrain Payne, the running back out of Notre Dame, headed over to Cincinnati. You can also throw in Zylan Perry there. We've seen Scott Satterfield sometimes have a RB1. I don't know if Payne or Perry are going to be that for Cincinnati this year, but something to keep an eye on there. Samuel Brown, the 5th, former running back out of Rutgers. Obviously, with the emergence of Antoine Raymond, he got out of there. He's headed over to Temple. Much like Roderick Robinson, I have no idea if he's healthy enough to actually be a contributing factor, even for a team like Temple. So something to keep an eye on there. Kansas State, we love Joe Jackson. I love Joe Jackson. He'll be probably the RB1 there, but they also add Rodney Fields and Jay Harris out of the portal from Oklahoma State and Oregon, respectively. So something to keep an eye on there. And then Trayon Webb, former 4-star running back out of Florida, headed over to Appalachian State. They lose their top guy, but I also like Jamal Lewis over there. And so we'll see how that plays out there. So a couple of other guys to keep an eye out for. But Chris, let's talk about some of the top uncommitted guys. Very different type of list this week than what we had last week. Again, with quarterbacks, the portal was still pretty wide open. There are some big names that are yet to commit or like are on the verge of committing. Not so much with running backs. In fact, I had to redo this list like 3 or 4 times because we just kept having guys find their new homes. But the top guys, in my opinion, that still need to find a spot that may have impact on CFF going forward are Makhi Frazier, running back out of Michigan State, Gavin Sawchuk, running back out of Florida State, Dior Hubbard, the running back out of West Virginia, Floyd Chalk, running back out of San Jose State, and Qua Ashley, running back out of Ball State. Like I said, very different list than last week. These guys are not nearly the same caliber, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if any of these guys end up not really contributing to CFF this year. But Chris, of these 5 guys, are there any that you are particularly excited to see where they land?
I would say Floyd Chalk. You know, he's had some spurts there at San Jose State. Depending where he ends up, if he gets the opportunity, I think he could be a decent fantasy option. Quay Ashley, reception wise, and he can get onto a backfield and be the pass catching back for a team. Quay Ashley can put up some fantasy points. Makhi Frazier was meh last year. He had some games, I think only 1 or 2 games where he was startable for fantasy. So and then Gavin Sawchuk. We've seen Gavin Sawchuk. We were hoping he'd be the guy at Oklahoma, and then he transferred to Florida State. And we were like, oh, man, he's going to be the guy at Florida State. We're excited. We know what the RB1s can do at Florida State. Absolutely nothing for us last year. So if all these guys, maybe except the last 2, Makhi Frazier, Gavin Sawchuk, Dior Hubbard is still looking for an opportunity. If these guys can get maybe step down into a G5 team and get on a team where they could be that RB1 workhorse for their potential programs, there's good opportunity there and there's good potential for draft value. But other than that, I'm not overly excited for any of the 5.
Yeah, I think the ship has sailed on Gavin Sawchuk, especially if he lands at a P4 program. You cannot draft him. Makhi Frazier might be a little interesting. He visited Oregon, which I think might be somewhat interesting. Obviously, they got the 2 young guys, right, in Davison and oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the other guy's name. What happens when I record at 10:20 at night? Oh my God, Jared. You are failing epically. Find the name real quick. Don't fail me now. It is Deer Hill. So they got Hill, they got Davison, right? They might need a more veteran presence in that running back room, and I think Makhi Frazier could help them out with that, and I think he could end up being the potential RB1 if they don't feel super great about Davison and Hill. I don't know why you wouldn't. Those guys have been phenomenal this year, but I'm also not on Oregon's coaching staff, so that might be interesting. But for the rest of these guys, yeah, it's like I have no clue where they could possibly end up. And it could range from a place where they're the RB3 and they could, like you said with Quay Ashley, he could just be a pass catching back on a Power 4 team somewhere. Or they could land somewhere in the MAC and we're sitting there being like, okay, this is Central Michigan's new RB1 here. Who knows?
Yeah.
I have no clue.
Yep.
Like I said, very different list than last week. I wouldn't be shocked at all if all of these names are just out of our mouth completely by the time fall rolls around. So,
I would be surprised either.
With that, we've come to the end of the show. Chris, hope I haven't scared you off, man. We covered a lot of stuff going on this time of year, so these shows are going to typically be longer, but man, you've been a trooper. You're so much fun to be around, Chris, man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jared. No, not scared off. Feelings mutual. Had a great time. I don't know how long we've been on here. I can't see the time.
Hour 46.
Hour 46. So just like the QB episode, tons of fun. Yeah. I mean, discussing running backs is always a great time because these are the guys that are the backbone of your fantasy teams. And a lot of these guys are going to carry you to titles. So being able to talk about them and just seeing the one thing, not the one thing, but one of the things that I love so much about college fantasy football is the constant turnover. Mm-hmm. Year in and year out, these guys are just going team after team after team. And who knows what it's going to be 5 to 10 years from now. There might be policies in place that kind of inhibit this kind of movement through the transfer portal. But for now, I'm all for it. You either hate it or you love it, and I'm on the love it side, man. Thank you.
No, it is a lot of fun doing all the research and seeing how guys are going to fit into different systems. And again, like we said, a guy like Makhi Hughes is getting second life because of his transfer destination, right? Like in years past, he could have been stuck in a really bad situation, and you're just kind of stuck there, sitting him on a roster somewhere. But now he can go get a better opportunity, right? Yep. So you definitely have to love that aspect of it. It is also so exhausting keeping up with all of this, right? But that's where we come in.
Researching and everything.
That is our job. We are here to provide all that information for everybody, and I'm hoping all of you out there listening are thinking we are doing a good job with that. So, speaking of all of you guys out there, appreciate all of you guys for listening. If you guys have not already, make sure you leave a like, a comment, and subscribe if you're watching this on the YouTube side of things. If you're on the podcast side of things, just make sure you follow the show. Make sure you leave a 5-star review wherever you can. Make sure you check out the rest of the Campus Again podcast network for shows ranging on pretty much anything you can think of related to the college fantasy game. And we'll see you guys back here next Monday, where we're going to start breaking down the wide receivers. And boy, boy, oh boy, that's a wild, wild west position right there. A lot of changes going on there. Until then, really, really appreciate you guys and hope you guys have a wonderful and blessed week.